Hello, everyone. It's very happy to see everyone coming from the world joining our seminar today. Welcome. My name is Sunny. I'm a wildlife conservationist from China, and I will be facilitating today's seminar. And I'm also a master's student from Yale University, and my research focus is on human-wildlife interactions. And I've been working with leopards, snub-nosed monkey, and various wildlife on the Tibetan plateau. So today I'm very honored to be here and introduce my friend and former colleague, Xinyue Xia. Um, Xinyue is a conservation practitioner and researcher from Chinese Village Conservation Alliance, specializing in conservation of manure and other wild phyllis in China. Since 2022, she has led field efforts to study manure population dynamics and address emerging threats. Her team employs camera trapping, fecal DNA, and other means to generate robust ecological data. They also integrate population and habitat modeling with community-based conservation and public engagement. By combining science with actions, her work aims to strengthen public understanding of manure and their desert habitat, catalyzing broader research and conservation initiatives and supporting holistic landscape protection. With that, I will hand over to Xinyue.
Thank you, Sunny. And it's very glad to see you all today. And good morning, good afternoon, and good evening for everyone in the world. And also thanks Raki and Bayala for organizing this talk. And I would also like to thank Anna for recommending me to share our work at the Snow Leopard Network webinar. So before we begin, I'd like to briefly introduce our organization. I'm Xinyue and I work with the Chinese Village Conservation Alliance, where I lead the Manu conservation program in the arid northwest region of China. CFCA is an NGO in China. We focus on the protection of China's native wildcats. Guided by scientific principles, we work through the lens of China's 12 wildcat species to safeguard terrestrial biodiversity. And in addition to the manu we are discussing today, we've also been researching and protecting the North China leopard and the clouded leopard in other parts of China. Well, today I'd like to share a story about manus in the desert landscape of the northwest China. And it begins with its image, a manu in the sandy desert. This photo might come as a surprise because we usually think of manus as living in cold, arid, rocky steppes. We rarely hear about them living in sand dunes. So this raised many questions for us. Why are manus showing up in the sandy desert? Where do they come from? And what is special about this particular desert? I'd like to share you with mainly these four parts. Manus in non-typical habitat, manus in typical habitat, multi-pressures in both habitats, and our conservation efforts. So let's first locate this sandy desert. You can see the red circle area on the map. This is the middle section of the Hexi corridor in northwest China. You can see the light green outline shows the Hexi corridor, and the dotted area is in the northern Zhangye Desert. And to the north of the northern Zhangye Desert lies the Badan Desert. To the south is the Hexi corridor oasis, and further south are the Qilian Mountains and the Tibetan Plateau. You can also see that the northern Zhangye Desert sits exactly at the edge of the Manu range. This pink here, according to the IUCN Red List assessment. And the desert patch where we found manuls is southernmost fringe of the Baden Desert. It's a strip about only 8 kilometers wide. And this site is not a pristine wilderness. It is actually a landscape shaped by 4 decades of anti-desertification work, including sexual planting. So today, some sexual have grown as tall as 2 to 3 meters, and though there are also areas with young success. So this discovery happened in a human-modified ecosystem, and we also call it a non-typical habitat for manuls. So let's take a closer look at how manuls live here. It's a video on the left. You can see a manule is emerging from a burrow, and the blue material you see is nylon netting for sand stabilization. And in the video on the right, a manule is scratching the sand. Since marking is, and even in the desert, manuls choose elevated or sheltered spots for activity and marking. But here's a question. In a desert like this, what do manuls eat? And the answer is the great gerbil. We have collected the manule faces from the non-typical site and conducted a preliminary dietary analysis. The main food component here was the great gerbil. So why are there so many great gerbils here? That brings us back to the sexual planting. Great gerbils love sexual branches. You can see the picture. It's just eating the branches. And as the artificial sexual forest grew, so did the gerbil population. And around the suxul, we can also see many fresh gerbil burrows here. And also, great gerbils are not only prey for manuls, but an important food source for red foxes and Asiatic wildcats. You can see they are catching the great gerbils into the burrows. And that's right, manuls and Asiatic wildcats share this desert. So here, not only do manuls and Asiatic wildcats both eat gerbils, they also like to scent mark the same burrows. The large burrow in the sandy desert are mostly dug by Asian badgers. In this sandy desert, there is a lack of rocks and other shelter. So the burrows dug by these ecological engineers, the badgers, are extremely important for wildlife. And burrows are a scarce resource here. Here's a short video. So if you are not careful enough, you might get caught by the resident. And this desert is more alive than we tend to think. The area supports a surprisingly rich wildlife community. To date, we have recorded 65 animal species from 18 orders and 32 families. And here are including like jerboa, hamster, long-eared hedgehog, marble polecat, some lizards, and so on. And we are very encouraged to see so many species here in this non-typical sandy desert. But the question is, how did the desert come to host such a diversity of animals and mammals? This sandy desert covers less than 100 square kilometers. It's not very large for mammal habitat. So where did these mammals come from? To answer that, we need to zoom out and look at the broader desert landscape surrounding this area. Here is the map. Over the past 3 years, we conducted a grid-based manu distribution survey across nearly 3,000 square kilometers of the northern Xinyue Desert and the predicted habitat suitability. The results show that this human-modified sandy desert area has medium suitability. And to the east, here you can see the red part and the yellow part. There is a much larger expanse of high and medium suitability manu habitat. So our current hypothesis is that manus appear in this sandy desert because a source population exists nearby, and a healthy source population expands outward, and this area happens to provide a relatively suitable habitat for dispersing individuals. That's explain why we can find manus in a non-typical habitat. So we also call this habitat with a source population a typical habitat. And one more thing is that none of these areas fall within China's protected areas. And here is a difference we can see between typical and non-typical habitat. First, if we look at the landscape, you can see that the typical habitat consists of slightly rugged hills and large plains, and which dominates by semi-striped communities. And the non-typical habitats on the left is mainly artificial saxifrage forest created through desertification control. And then its manus diet also differs between the two areas. In the non-typical habitat, great gerbiles are the main food for manus, and in the typical habitat, the manus diet is more diverse. Besides great gerbiles, hamsters, small birds, Mongolian hares, and even livestock remains make up a significant proportion. However, neither these two locations have picas. So it's like a bit different from other manu habitats. And now I believe you can see some differences between these two types of habitats. And so what about the manu population in the typical habitat? Since 2022, we have been conducting manu population surveys here, mainly in collaboration with the Institute of Zoology at the Chinese Academy of Science. So here is our study area. Between May and to September 2022, we conducted a manu population survey across 20 square kilometers. We identified 12 individual manus and estimated the population density at about 80 individuals per 100 square kilometers. That's quite a high density for manus. So that also raises a new question. How could be so many manus here? For manus, dens are a key survival factor. Unlike some other typical manu habitats here, the typical habitat in the northern Xinyue Desert lacks large rocks and rock crevices, but there are also no mammals digging burrows here. The caves here mostly are naturally formed by wind and water erosion. You can see the pictures we have recorded here in the northern Xinyue Desert. The caves are relatively abandoned, so we also have recorded some interesting behaviors of manus using caves. And so then we can see a short story about a manu using a cave to store food. And these two are the main characters of the story. On the left, the manu with the blood on his mouth and the very satisfied look in his eyes is named Four Meals. And on the right, the one that looks quite sly, named chicken thief. The story of four mules and chicken thief took place in early February 2023. It was a busy, productive, and beautiful afternoon. On 3rd February at 13:19, four mules brought back the first prey of the day, a gerbil. And 3 hours later, four mules brought back a Pallas sand grouse. We thought that would be enough for the day, but within the next hour and a half, it brought back 2 more sand grouse. Here you can see the video. So it's like quadrupole in one day. That's how four mules got its name. But even though it's called four mules couldn't finish all those sand grouse, so he stored them inside the cave. And that gave another manu an opportunity. Chicken thief. So after storing the 3 sand grouse on 3rd February, four mules stayed at the cave and left on 4th February. Then 2 days later, in the early morning of 6th February, we recorded another manu. We see it's another manu because through the careful facial identification, we found that it was not the same individual as four mules. And then that's chicken thief. She arrived at the burrow entrance, but hesitated for a long time, lying outside for a full about 28 hours. Finally, on the morning of 8th February, she decided to eat the sand grouse from the cave. Here you can see the video. She really enjoyed the sand grouse if you can hear the sound of her eating. And you can also see that the chicken thief seemed a bit guilty. Even birds flying past away startled her. And the feathers at the cave entrance belonged to the sand grouse, which was evidence of the feast for four mules and the chicken thief. And the flock of sand grouse in the bottom right here was photographed on 1st February, less than 2 kilometers from the cave. So it seems that neither manu will be short of food recently. And also this year we found it's like a sand grouse big year. We have recorded many sand grouse here, but only 2023, and we haven't got this so many sand grouse in other years. But here you can see that for manus, food and dance are equally important. So this short story gives us a glimpse of the dance and the food resources in a typical manu habitat. But soon after, we began to see a decline in manus recorded here. Compared with May to September 2022, both detection and occupancy rate dropped significantly during the same months in 2023, and also the same time, the number of identifiable individual manus in the same 20 square kilometers fell from 12 in 2022 to 6 in 2023, and then to only 2 in 2024. We found that this manu population is facing multiple threats and pressures. So let's see how these threats and pressures are. First, habitat adaptation. In recent years, Northwest China has seen a major trend toward renewable energy infrastructure. Large parts of the northern Zhangye Desert have been zoned for energy bases, meaning extensive wind farms, solar farms, and supporting facilities. And as you can see here on the top, the wind turbines went up behind this menu within just 3 months. And we also compared manual activity rhythms in areas with and without wind turbines. In the area with no turbines, manuals showed peak activity at dawn and dusk, and in wind farm areas, however, they shifted their activity peak to late night, around 10 p.m. to 12 p.m., and reduced dawn activity. And also, in addition, rodent control campaigns are carried out here to prevent grassland desertification. You can see the map here on the right. The gray areas on the map show the rodent control zones from May to July 2023, which overlap exactly with the study area where we recorded declines in manuals. So unfortunately, wind farm construction was also completed and became operational at the same time. So it's hard to see which factor caused the manual population decline. Most likely, it's a combination of multiple pressures. On top of habitat adaptation and rodent control, these manuals also experienced climate impacts in 2023 and 2024. Growing season rainfall decreased, vegetation failed to regreen, and the ponds that used to hold water dried up. And climate change likely affects manuals through a trophic cascade from vegetation to rodents. And we also documented abandoned and free-roaming dogs killing manuals inside burrows in the sandy deserts. These are not dogs from herders. They are mostly street dogs from cities and villages on the edge of the oasis to desert transitional zone. And I'm not sure if you want to see this cruel scene. The video recorded the incidents. And this burrow is the same burrows we have showed before. It was dug by Asian badger and manuals, wildcats. They all like to use these barrels. And this map shows where these threats are concentrated. Each of the two habitats faces its own major threats. You can see in non-typical habitat, the main pressure is like rodent control and the dogs. And in the typical habitat, it will be habitat adaptation, rodent control, and climate change. What worries us is that these pressures are widespread across the northern Zhangye Desert, and changes in key habitats and declines in source populations will inevitably affect manuals at the periphery. So once the habitat becomes fragmented, the local manual population faces a risk of extinction. So given that this desert and its manuals are still understudied, we think it is more urgent than ever to take timely conservation actions to mitigate the multiple pressures on the manual population. And our current conservation work focuses on these following areas: habitat enhancement, policy advocacy, multi-stakeholder cooperation, and public engagement. And I will briefly introduce some of these efforts. One of our actions is to install artificial dams in the non-typical habitat to increase the availability in the sandy desert and to prevent dog entry. by controlling the entrance size. We consider factors such as visibility, durability, and environmental friendliness to test different materials and installation methods, as well as whether manuals show preference for different types of dens. And we are still in the early stages and have not yet accumulated much data. But based on the existing records, we have some observations. Here I can share with you. And the good news is that manuals were coming in the artificial dens just 2 months after we installed the first batch. They didn't shy away from our human-made structures. In fact, they explored almost every type of den. And these artificial dens have also benefited many other animals. We even recorded red foxes and Asiatic wildcats using the dens for breeding. However, so far we haven't not recorded manuals using artificial dens for breeding. This may reflect that manuals, as cautious and sensitive small cats, are more aware of artificial structures compared to wildcats and red foxes. But here also we can see the entrance design, which is less than 20 centimeters in diameter, can successfully prevent adult red foxes and dogs from entry, which can provide a relatively safe shelter for cubs and manuals. So while artificial dens have shown initial results in the sandy desert, their coverage is limited. So conservation at scale still requires policy change. Based on the distribution of manuals and other wildlife, we have drawn key habitat areas and recommended the government agencies to avoid these areas in planning, construction, and rodent control. Through continuous communication and coordination, the local government has, in accordance with our suggestions, decided not to conduct rodent control in the priority protection areas. However, the improvement of the rodent control policy still requires long-term research and support from conservation efforts. And we're also working with local government and wind farm companies with the manuals habitat to build artificial water sources for desert wildlife during dry periods. We hope that through such measures, local energy companies can be encouraged to participate in the conservation efforts and compensate for the environmental impacts caused by development and construction. More effective cooperation models are still being explored. And more importantly, these small collaborations help us build multiple stakeholder cooperation and lay the groundwork for more conservation actions outside the protected areas. So such an attempt has also enabled us to be shortlisted as one of the potential OECM cases. And the artificial water sources built through collaboration have begun to show good news too. Here you can see some animals drinking water. So although manuals generally do not need to drink water directly, this water source can still provide for other desert wildlife during dry seasons. And we are also raising public awareness of desert biodiversity through educational videos and media outreach. And much of the development and restoration in desert areas stems from a common misconception that deserts are empty wastelands that need to be improved. Many people do not realize that the deserts are fully functional ecosystems with unique biodiversity. Therefore, we need to change public perceptions of deserts in order to draw more attention to these conservation gaps. And at the same time, we continue to survey and study desert manuals, hoping to fill knowledge and conservation gaps. So in 2025, we conducted a rapid research in areas east of northern Zhangye Desert and recorded manuals at multiple sites. Can see these red crosses. These are also outside the Manu global range. And the population status and threats to manuals in these areas is also unknown and require further investigation. So after nearly 5 years of work in the northern Zhangye Desert, many questions about manuals and desert ecosystems remain unanswered. But here is what we have learned, is that non-typical habitats can be critically important, and human-modified landscapes may offer new opportunities for wildlife, and the source populations remain keen to conservation. And moreover, in the context of rapid environmental change, taking timely conservation actions may be more important than answering every research question first. So we hope that these efforts will raise greater awareness and promote protection for manuals and the desert ecosystem in northwest China. And finally, I would like to express my gratitude to all the volunteers and partners who have participated in our work. And without you guys, none of this sustained research and conservation would be possible. Well, that's all for the sharing today. Thank you much for your time, and I'd be happy to take questions.
Thanks a lot, Xinyue, for this fascinating stories. And like the work you and your team has done is impressive, and I know that our audience have many questions to ask. So let's I will open the floor for questions. And people can you can type your question in the chat box or feel free to raise your hand so you can talk too. So this is from Sandro. A nice talk on a nice species and a very nice speaker too. Compliment. Which relationships have developed between the Asiatic wildcat and the manu? Do they feed on the same prey? Would you expect competition to develop? Any information on wildcat numbers before and after arrival of manu? Thank you.
Thank you, Sandra. Thank you, Sunny. Let's see. Okay, actually, there's goes another story. The first we came to northern Zhangye Desert is because we see that there will be Asiatic wildcats here, but accidentally we found manuals here, so we started to study manu, but we also found the Asiatic wildcats later, and we found that they are in the same habitat. Till now, we only record that the Asiatic wildcats hunting the great gerbials, and we tested the menu species. It also eats great gerbials, but we haven't got so many details about their dietary. Will it be so many differences, or they mostly feed on the same prey? But we think it more have the competitions here, because in 2025, we also conducted a population survey in the non-typical habitat to study manu, but we did not record so much manuals here, but we recorded about 3 individuals of Asiatic wildcats. So it's an interesting thing that if is because of the Asiatic cats here and they are dominated these habitats, so the manuals are faded away, or it is because the source population is declining and then influencing the manuals here in the non-typical habitat. So there are still questions for us to explore.
Right, right. There's so many factors influencing this ecosystem. Yeah. Cool. So next probably I will let Olivia ask your question.
I was saying thank you for your great talk. I was just wondering, you were noting that the places where you had the manual sightings were outside its official range. Would it help at all in terms of the protection measures you're trying to put in place, whether it's the water, the rodent control, for the official distribution map to include the places you've found them? Does that make any difference in terms of how effectively you can advocate for the manual to have protections?
Thank you, Olivia. Yes, I think it's hard to take conservation efforts outside this menu range because the government see that that's not the main habitat for manuals. So, and we don't have so many like papers and other evidences to prove that that's really an important habitat for manuals. And also another thing is that these places are many of these places are in the development of the renewable energy. So for the development consideration, and this will be like no, it just I know that there's manual populations here, but we will not put it into protected areas because we need to development here. So it's hard to negotiate with the government, but we are still working on it.
Yeah, so if the distribution map was updated, that would help you essentially.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, okay, that's very interesting. Cool, thank you.
Cool. Yeah, this is a very typical issue that many endangered wild species is facing in China and in other places around the globe. So in the chat box, Iqbal, sorry if I'm pronouncing it incorrectly, is asking what measure taken in China to check the population of free-ranging dogs?
Thanks, Iqbal. I'm not sure if I get the pronunciation right. I think we didn't done such efforts to measure the free-ranging dogs. We only observe the dogs in our study site that this group of dogs is about like 10 to 20 individuals, and they are mostly like active on the edge of the oasis to desert transitional zone, and sometimes they will go inside the sandy desert. So we only know that these dogs are matters in these areas, but we are not sure whether other places facing the same issues as us.
Right. Next one is Anna. Do Longshou Mountains connect to manul habitats in Qilian Mountains?
Oh, thanks, Anna. You know the map is very consciously. And yes, the Longshan Mountains is very close to Chilean mountains. I think for it's like 100 or 20 or 200 years ago, it can connected with the manu habitats in Chilean mountains. But now there goes like a very long highway and the railways inside these two parts. So I think it's a bit hard for menus to like go through these roads, and the habitats can be like fragmented in these two parts. But because we are not like go to these places to see if they are still have some corridors. So like maybe there will be some connections. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And maybe following up her question, I'm also quite curious, like, have you find this like same individual appearing in both typical and non-typical habitats?
That's what I want to see, but not yet.
Right. Right. Okay. Yeah. Like even though they probably dispersed from the source population, then.
Yes, but we haven't recorded that.
Right.
Mm.
Looking forward. Okay, so Archiana, this question is from Archiana. How climate change is affecting the population of manure?
Okay. Now we can see if the climate change can affect directly on the population of mammals, because we haven't do like the control areas to study these factors. But what we can see is that the drought can directly affect the vegetation growth, and it may influences the gerbials and like Pallas populations, and then affected the population of mammals. But we don't have evidence now.
All right. And I think like you're also mentioning in some other articles from your work saying that the drought is facing like it's impacting this area, right? It's some area has been lack of rainfall for the entire season, so this drought might have influenced the population of their prey and indirectly impacting the manure population.
Yes, maybe it's like this.
Right. Yeah, but we need more research and long-term monitoring. Next is from Kirsten. Interesting to learn that, oh, that's not a question. Interesting to learn that wind farms have a negative impact on manure.
Yeah,
Okay.
yes, we actually have a study with our research partners, and now we can see that the wind farm can like changing the menus their activity and their dietary, but we still cannot find like the directly impact on menu, because there are so many factors and pressures here, and it's difficult to isolate it one of the factors to see if that is the most important factor.
Right. Yeah, it is very hard, and they're interacting like a web and might need also long-term data to show that their real impact. Yeah, so next one from Flavia. I was wondering about the perception of the cats by the local population and developers. Have you got these insights?
That's a good question. Actually we have also like have some semi-structured surveys to local people and the local developers. And I think most of them haven't seen the cats, and they don't know here are still many manuls and other like desert species. So for them, they think that's a place that is with no value, so they need to explore and develop as green energy and to make it to be green to like the forest. So there's still many like knowledge gaps for the local people.
Yeah. And talking about the local communities, do they hurt their livestock in these areas? Do they utilize this area intensively?
So livestock's most like camels. So in the past they used to like herding sheep and cows, but because of the desertification in this area and the government don't allow them to do that anymore, only allow them to like herd camels. So there are still many camels here in the habitat.
Right. That's another question from Achana, sorry about that. Are you planning for molecular study to know inbreeding?
We won't do that, but we don't have so many times and technologies. Most of our research work are cooperated with the partners. So we are very happy to have more like cooperations with other researchers to study this.
Yeah, this is a call for collaboration. Uh, yeah, so next one. I would like to ask how you got into what you do. Where did your passion for feline come from?
Thank you. I think it just the cats. They're so cute.
Yeah.
So it's very. I think it's very like interesting to go into wild to see different landscapes and the vegetation and the species around. And for me, it's very interesting to do this. And but also like conservation is another thing. It's not just to enjoy the uh wildlife, but also you need to put some efforts to uh like fight with all the pressures and the threats. So but that's also hard and but interesting.
Yeah, totally. Next one from Alania, Lina, I'm sorry. On the topic of connecting the Longshu Mountains and Qilian, are there any efforts to try to build wildlife passes or corridors to allow movement of manure or other animal across the highway and train tracks between the two mountain range? If not, would that be something interesting to look into the future?
Well, thank you. It's a good question. Um, actually, we haven't paid much more attention to these places between Longshu Mountains and the Qilian Mountains. Uh, so except the highway and the train tracks, there are also a lot of villages and cities inside because it's like an oasis in the large scale of desert areas. So the populations are very high in these places, and it's like a long distance between Longshan Mountain and Qilian to connect it. So, but I think we can find like some places that is maybe suitable to to find out the corridors, and but now we haven't paid much attention to that. I hope in the future we can do that.
Right. Next one from Sandro. Has the regime of rains and temperature been changing in the typical and not typical habitats in the last few decades? If yes, perhaps there may have been effects on prey densities and quality, driving the manual colonization of the formerly not typical area.
Thank you, Sandra. Yes, we have looked through the like rain and temperature trends in the past, and we see it declines in the past few decades, and it also has some like it's just a declines in the total rains, but a raise of the temperature here in the non-typical habitats and typical habitats, and but we don't have much more data on the free population, and we don't have the data like how the menu distributed and the menu populations before. So it's hard for us to compare the changes now and in the past, but what we can do is that to continue our investigations here in these two areas to see what will happen in the future.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Cool. Next is from Ibra. Thank you for the talk. The topics were very interesting. Would it be possible to share the construction protocol for the artificial dens? I would also like to know whether this approach was based on any published paper, technical report, or previous conservation project. I'm particularly interested in the artificial dens as a potential tool to reduce predation by free-ranging or domestic dogs, which is one of the main threats affecting Pallas' cat population in some areas.
Okay. Actually, we are just texting the artificial dens ourselves. We tried like different versions of the artificial dens to use different materials like woods or the plastic paths or even bricks to see if it's easy for us to build it in the in the desert, because it is hard for vehicles to bring such many materials in, and we need to hold this by ourselves. So first of all, we just find some materials easy to carry with us, and then we want to see if it was like stable in the desert, because when it's windy in mostly spring, the sands will be blow into the entrance of the artificial dens. So we need to find some shelters to prevent the sands into the dens, and we also want to see if it's like stable to put these materials under the sand dunes, because the first version we just dig the hole, dig a cave by ourselves, and we don't put some like structures in it, and then we saw the caves was collapsed after 2 months. So then we just put these structures into the caves. But later we realized that manuls may do not prefer this too much artificial structures. So we then like changed again our methods to think if we can like put these structures more naturally and to meet the manuals need. But at the same time, we find that red foxes and Asiatic wildcats, they are really like these artificial dens. So now the question is, are we building these artificial dens for manuals or for other animals? So it's still need sometimes to see if our construction approaches is suitable or it is good for manuals. But yes, we are just preparing the construction protocol at the same time. And if you want to know about more details now, I can send you some like records here. But now we don't like publish the materials for that.
Cool. Yeah, I think you guys constructed those dens like an artist, like like compelling up what you have for like there, and like just based on the condition and changing again, improving and improving. Yeah. So I think last one, it's China. It seems that no EIA, I think she means environmental assessment, was done by the government, as the area is very rich in biodiversity.
Yes, actually it is required to have environmental impact assessment before constructions or before energy development. But for the government or the relative companies, they just don't know that this place is very rich in biodiversity. And sometimes they know some about the biodiversity, but they may just get rid of these informations to pass this EIA to let the constructions quickly build here because the development needs. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, I think this is everything we got. We'll hand over to Lyra for closing remark. And thank you everyone for asking the question. And myself has learned a lot from this talk. And thank you, Xinyue, as well.
So I think there are some email addresses, and then people want to continue, keep in touch with you guys, so we can actually deliver those emails and informations to you guys. So as we bring today's session to a close, I want to extend huge thank you to Xinyue Xiang, for your extensive knowledge and really interesting study. And thank you for Sunny Wang for your facilitation. And I would like also to thank for our participants around joining us today from across the globe. And your questions and your engagement makes our webinar really valuable. So we are here at Snow Leopard Network looking forward to having you for our next webinar. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, guys,
Thank
and
you.
hope to get in touch later.
Thank you.